morning, Kingsley community. Pastor Colleen Wehrman here, coming to you with another daily devotion for Wednesday, March 24th, 2021. And again, following the Ignatian workout for Lent by Tim Muldoon. And we are on I Hurt Because I Love. And so we are doing exercise 25. This is the arrest of Jesus in the garden. Mark 14:43 through 50. Immediately, while Jesus was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived, and with him there was a crowd with swords and clubs, from the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard." So when he came, he went up to him at once and said, "Rabbi," and kissed him. Then they laid hands on him and arrested him. But one of those who stood near drew his sword and struck the slave of the high priest, cutting off his ear. Then Jesus said to them, "Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me as though I were a bandit? Day after day I was with you in the temple teaching, and you did not arrest me. But let the scriptures be fulfilled." All of them deserted him and fled. Mark 14:43 through 50. Tim writes, the follower of Christ will, if he or she remains faithful, face suffering. Isn't that a great devotional today? Again, we're in Lent. The reason is simple. People are prone to sin, and in any institution, sin is magnified. Jesus' own life testifies to this simple truth. He preached the kingdom. He showed merciful, compassionate love to those on the margins of society. He challenged the religious and political leaders of his time, and they sought to kill him. The sad story of Judas offers us a window into the effect of sin. Here is a man who knew Jesus intimately and who, whether out of ignorance or malice, it is impossible to say, chose to act against him. Perhaps he was simply a feckless pawn who, impatient with Jesus' humility, hoped to move Jesus to a position of political activism. Perhaps he wanted a stronger demonstration of Jesus' power by drawing him into a public demonstration against Rome. Perhaps he believed Jesus was a fake. In any case, Judas' sin against Jesus is caught up in the larger mechanisms of power among the religious and political leaders of the region, and Jesus is arrested. The Son of God is thrown into prison. So here we see Judas, whatever his reason for betraying Jesus, was caught up in the religious and political bigger sin of the world that day. So know that when you intentionally sin, because Judas intentionally sinned, we don't know his reason why, but we know that that was intentional and it was planned, so premeditated. So, and when he does that, when you sin intentionally, know that you're joining into the bigger picture of sin in the world. You're joining in there in that world of constant sin, brokenness, whatever it is, whether it's governmental, environmental, religious, politics, it's all, you can find sin in all of that. You can find sin in the church. I know, not supposed to, but you do. So Judas, whatever his reason was, joined on the bandwagon of this bigger, broader picture of sin because the religious leaders were out to kill Jesus and they were looking for a way to do it. So they thought they had a way because they didn't believe he was the Messiah or the Son of God. They didn't believe he was God incarnate, so they accused him of blasphemy. But that in itself is not punishable by death according to the Roman government. So they had to trump up a charge against him, which was tyranny, saying he claimed himself to be the king of the Jews and he was going to take over as king, and that's considered against the law and punishable by death. And so the main reason the religious leaders didn't like him is because he was changing ways that they had always done it. They've always cheated the people. They've always added laws that were impossible for the people to follow. And so when they couldn't follow it, they had to pay to get out of it. They didn't practice what they preached. Jesus talks about that a number of times. And Jesus called them out and embarrassed them, as well he should have, because they weren't, like they said, do what the Pharisees say, but don't do what they do, because they don't do what they say. So they don't practice what they preach. And so he called them out a number of times, and they had had enough. So they decided they were going to bring him up on charges of blasphemy. So they go to arrest him, and they find the perfect opportunity because Judas had given up the location of where Jesus would be. And we don't know why Judas did it. You know, a lot of the disciples were waiting for Jesus to take over power over the Roman government. They wanted the oppression of the Romans to cease. Now, they called it Pax Romana, we hear in our history books, but there were, you know, which is supposed to be the peace of Rome, but there was nothing. There was no peace for the Israelites, the Jewish people, God's people. They did not receive peace. They received increased taxes. They received extortionists of tax collectors, and they were living on the brink of poverty all the time. And they just, you know, it's like you think, geez, government, can I give you any more money? Because I don't have any more to give. You know, I'm out. That's all I got. Can't make any more money. Yet you keep raising the taxes. And so that was what was happening, which led to poverty and lack of food. So here comes the Messiah who's going to give them hope and let them know that he's there for them. And the kingdom of God is here. The kingdom of God is near. The kingdom of God was walking and talking and living and breathing on this earth for 33 years. And many of the disciples missed it until after the resurrection. And we know that the religious leaders missed it, but theirs was caught up in sin, not ignorance. The disciples just didn't get it, but they were willing to follow Jesus. And even one of them was willing to pull out a sword and chop off the ear of one of the Roman guards, or the Pharisees' guards. These were the Pharisees that arrested him. So they put him on trial, and you know the rest of the story. They want him dead, but they don't want to irritate all the people that were following him. So they chickened out and took him to Pontius Pilate, or sent him to Herod. Herod said, I don't care. He's not doing anything I want him to do. And they take him to Pontius Pilate. They pressure Pontius Pilate that if he doesn't kill Jesus, there's going to be a riot. So because Jesus is claiming he's the king of the Jews, which is just ironic that that's what Caiaphas says, calls him the king of the Jews. How prophetic. And he didn't get it. So the Son of God is thrown into prison. Tim continues, what is astounding is that Jesus offers almost no defense on his own behalf. Why does he not call Herod or Pontius Pilate on their injustices? Why does he not use the opportunity to stand before the Sanhedrin, which was the court of the religious leaders, to denounce their perversion of justice? Why does he go quietly? What is he trying to avoid? And where's God the Father in all of this? That's where he ends. Well, we know God the Father was right there. And we know that this was not Jesus's will. I mean, it was the will of the Father, but we know that he asked God to take that cup from him in the garden where he suffered and sweat blood, you know, to try to just, you know, not go through with this, but he said, not my will, but yours be done. So our prayer is, Lord, you let your only Son be led by unjust men to jail, and you let him suffer. I do not understand the suffering, or my suffering, or the sufferings of others. I do not understand the injustices of the world. Yet, I trust that you are with us when we suffer, and that your will unfolds even where there is great suffering. So we know that God's will did unfold. You know, God did rescue Jesus. It wasn't on the cross. It was in the grave. So we know that God comes, he hears us, he's close to the brokenhearted, and he also rescues us. So he's actively present. He's not just going, oh, that's so sad. I hear your cries. Wish I could do something about it. No, he's actively present. He was actively present in the crucifixion. He did not save Jesus from the cross. He resurrected him from the grave, and that's where he rescued him. So know that if you're in the midst of suffering, it might be, you know, and you want out of it now. Of course we do. We're human beings. We don't want to suffer. And yet know that God is there, near to the brokenhearted. He hears, he sees, he knows, and he will rescue those who love him. And so Jesus is a perfect example of that. Although it wasn't when we wanted him to on the cross, it was when God decided he would in the grave. So, yet I trust that you are with us when we suffer, and that you, Lord, will unfold your will unfold even when there's great suffering. So stay with me in my suffering and help me to be present in your name to others who do suffer. I do not ask for understanding of suffering, only your grace in the midst of it. So that is how we are to pray in the midst of suffering for ourselves and for others that are suffering around the world. So what the action that Tim says we should take is learn about programs that minister to people in prison. Okay? Consider how you might participate in such a ministry or otherwise support it. So that's his action for today. Other things that you can do, is help the homeless, talk about suffering, help, underprivileged children that can't read, figure out how you can participate in some of these programs that speak to those who are suffering. Because if you can't read, and you never learn to read, you're not going to have a very good life. It's going to be difficult. So there's all kinds of ways that we can participate in the midst of others suffering. And so, for someone that's lost someone, you can take them a meal, you can grieve with them, you can do all of that. But you can also be there pointing to God, that God is still with them in the midst of the suffering. So know that God is near to the brokenhearted, and that he will rescue those who love him, those that follow him, those that know Christ as Lord. And it just might not be in the timing that we expect. So be patient and know that if you are in the midst of suffering and you know someone who is suffering, go to them, be with them, be a support. Let them know you love them, and let them know that God is near to the brokenhearted. I think that's what they need to hear. And pray with them and support them and help them. Don't just get on the phone and say, well, if you need anything, call me. They're never going to call you. If someone just lost a loved one and you say, well, if you need something, call me. No, show up 2 weeks later after that, or a month later, because you know what? That's when they're going to need you, because all the family will be gone and they'll be all by themselves with that grief. So that's when they'll need you. So then give them a call and drop off something for them. And, if you can go in safely and speak to them and pray with them over the phone and whatever. Offer support for those who suffer. And find a ministry that you can go alongside and help. Now, I misspoke about our Easter services. Our Easter services will be at 7:30 a.m. and 9 a.m. I hope I don't show up at 10 because it'll be over. So 7:30 a.m. and 9 a.m. on Easter morning. And then Good Friday at 7 p.m. So this Sunday is Palm Sunday, and I'm going to continue our sermon series, How Sweet the Sound, where we're looking at classic hymns, the stories behind the hymns, and the theology behind the hymns. And this hymn is, what's a hymn? I know it's based on Psalm 34. God is close to the brokenhearted. Oh, it is well with my soul. Duh. So a really good story behind it as well with my soul, about the man who penned it and what was happening in his life, and how he got those visual images of billowing seas and things like that. So it's a good story about it is well with my soul. And we'll look at Psalm 34. I know that God is with us in the midst of uncertainty and trials and sufferings. And we'll also look at Psalm 22, where Jesus cries from the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's much less of a cry to God as it is a messianic psalm that speaks that God is with Jesus and saves him not from the cross, but from the grave. And he'll do the same for us. So somehow I'll put that all together, hopefully by Sunday. So join me in person at 9 a.m. or right here live on Facebook at 9 a.m. for Palm Sunday. I will see you tomorrow with another daily devotion. Have a good day.